AMD Ryzen 9 9950X CPU tested with unlimited PPT mode, 320 watts power, over 5.5 GHz clocks across all cores, 40% faster versus Win 490OK. AMD's Ryzen 9 9950X CPU has been tested with a 5.5 GHz all-core overclock and again, using an unlimited power profile pushing 320 watts power. The final bombs of the AMD Ryzen 9 9950X CPU test has been dropped by an Inch forum member, Igor_Kavinsky, who has been showing us how the 16-core flagship scales at various DDP limits within the Blender benchmark. So far, he has shown 60 watts, 90 watts, 120 watts, 160 watts, 230 watts PPT results, and now, we have two new entries, one with a 5.5 GHz overclock at 253 watts and one with unlimited PPT. The chip being used by Igor's source is an engineering sample which should have slightly lower clocks than the retail chip. At 60 watts, the chip was able to come close to the Intel Core i9-12900K while boosting up to 4084 MHz, and at 90 watts, it was able to outperform the Ryzen 9 5950X while boosting up to 5053 MHz. At 120 watts, the chip beats all of the top current gen processors from Intel and AMD while boosting up to 5555 MHz, and the same is the case with the 230 watts result, which takes things up a notch with the frequency now hitting above 5.6 GHz. AMD Ryzen 9 9950X running at an unlimited PPT mode, sipping up to 320 watts power. Image source, Igor_Kavinsky, via an Inch forums. With the unlimited PPT mode, the maximum frequency didn't see any change, but the clock speeds across all cores were higher, going beyond 5.5 GHz, which in the case of the 230 watts PPT were around 5.4 GHz. There is also the 5.5 GHz static overclock, which was achieved at a PPT of 253 watts to match Intel's maximum power limit for its Core i9 CPUs. Do keep in mind that the other chips tested here are running at their peak power ratings. It's only the AMD Ryzen 9 9950X's CPU that has been tuned. To summarize it all, it should be mentioned that these results were achieved using a water cooling setup. AMD has officially recommended an AIO with its Ryzen 9 9000 CPUs such as the 9950X and 9900X, and we did mention earlier that Ryzen 9000 chips should run a bit cooler than the Ryzen 7000 Zen 4 CPUs. The cooling appears to be custom and very powerful, since keeping a chip under 90 C at a 320 watts DDP is key. An impressive feat in itself. AMD Ryzen 9 9950X CPU running at a fixed 5.5 GHz overclock with a 253 watts PPT, matching the PL2 limit of Intel's Core i9 CPUs. Image source, Igor_Kavinsky, via an Inch forums. With the unlimited PPT, the CPU hit a maximum temperature of 80 C while achieving 5621 MHz at peak and an average 5378 MHz frequency. With a static 253 watts PPT overclock, the CPU hit peak temperatures of 61 C while averaging 5.5 GHz across all cores. As you might expect, the 253 watts PPT and 5.5 GHz overclock were as fast as the unlimited PPT configuration, since all cores were running stable at a higher frequency and had lots of thermal room to work with, whereas the unlimited PPT was not only consuming more power but also ran much hotter. As such, the final performance of the CPU saw up to a 40% improvement over the Core i9-14900K and a 38% improvement over the Ryzen 9 7950X at their stock configurations. The performance per power scaling beyond 230 watts is minimal, and it is better to stick with the 230 watts PPT if you are aiming for the best performance. Or if you want that extra 5%, then going for the 5.5 GHz overclock across all cores should be good enough rather than going for an unlimited PPT. AMD has been leading the efficiency race with its strong Zen portfolio in the past releases, and that is looking to be true for the next generation lineup too. We are fast approaching the launch of the AMD Ryzen 9000 Zen 5 desktop CPUs, which are expected to hit retail later this month, and we can expect many more tests and reviews in the coming weeks.